Okay, it's 7:30 p.m. We are going to start this regular Board of Education meeting. Is this going to be feedback the whole time? Yeah, it is speaking at a stadium. Echo. Oh, there we go. All right, so we're going to call to order this meeting, regular meeting of the Rutherford Board of Education at 7:30 p.m. Going to ask everyone to please stand, if you can, for the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Here.
Mr. Conti?
Here.
Mr. Healy?
Here.
Mrs. Jones?
Present.
Mrs. Librera?
Here.
Mr. Mazzone?
Here.
Dr. Racine?
Here.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Here.
Dr. Olati?
Here.
You have a quorum. Thank you.
The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meeting of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Rutherford Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place posted on the bulletin board outside the Borough Clerk's office, mailed to the Herald, South Bergenite, and the Record newspapers, and filed with the Borough Clerk. Hard copies of the agenda are available in the meeting room, and the agenda is posted electronically on the Friday before the meeting date on the district's website at www.rutherfordschools.org. This regular meeting of the Rutherford Board of Education will be held as scheduled in the cafeteria at Rutherford High School. In accordance with the Governor's Executive Order 152, limiting indoor gatherings to the lesser of 25 people or 25% of the room's capacity, however, this meeting will be conducted utilizing video conferencing as allowed by the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6, as amended by PL 2020 C11. As only a limited number of members of the public will be able to attend the meeting in person, members of the public are encouraged to participate by logging on to the website listed on the agenda at 7:30 p.m. A video recording of the video conference meeting will be made available on the district's website, www.rutherfordschools.org, subsequent to the meeting. The video link can be found by opening the Board of Education link and clicking on Public Meetings and then Videos. All right, I apologize that I was only 2 minutes early. I got 3 text messages asking where I was. This is an extremely dedicated board. So we have just meeting minutes from the regular meeting of September 14th, 2020. They were in your packets. Does anyone have any questions or comments about them? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please enter those for the record. So we're going to start out this evening with the facilities project presentation from Rachel Tiedemann and John Carton from PSA Architects. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
We'll just turn it over to Mr. Carton, right?
Yep.
And I guess we should move a little bit, so.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Good to see you too.
Gotta get a little.
How about, any better?
Might want to take that off. No, not it's going to be the mic.
What's that?
Hold the mic.
Oh,
Because it's not right up against it, it won't pick you up.
how about now?
Perfect.
Good evening. Again, I'm John Carton with Somgen Architects. I'm a partner in charge of the projects here in Rutherford. Rachel Tiedemann is the project architect. We're going to tag team this. You can go ahead, Rachel. So we're here to discuss the referendum projects. And from this distance, I can't even read what it says up there. We'll talk about the team members and discuss the projects. And at the end, we'll have some question and answers. So the team is, for Somgen is myself, again, John. Not with us tonight is Kellen Chapin, the senior project architect. Rachel Tiedemann is the project architect. We have, at any one time during the process of all these projects we're executing on, 4 additional project architects, 5 assistant project managers, 2 job captains, between 10 and 15 interns, and 2 interior designers, all of which of a firm of about 80 people. So for the project overview, Rachel, she's intimate with all your projects, so she's going to take it from here, and we're going to switch places.
All right, I'm going to give John a chance to sit down, but it has been very good working with the staff here and the board and the principals and the directors that are, custodians that are taking care of everything. They've been wonderful to work with. So to go over the project so far, summer of 2020, we've been a little busy. John, if you go ahead to the first slide, we started at Lincoln Elementary School, and just to give you a little background, this is a 2-classroom addition with a restroom in between, a shared restroom. It is on top of an existing building element. It was anticipated to, be an addition at some point. So this one has moved quickly. Next slide. This project was awarded under budget to Catcord Construction. We did start construction June 9th, 2020. Now, currently we are ahead of schedule, and we anticipate wrapping everything up in November 2020. Challenges, we've had none. So far, you can see we have the addition. It is all weather tight. Just of last week, we've had the windows installed. The roof is good. The masonry is good, and we have started on the interior. Moving on to Union School, we had 10 classrooms that we replaced the floor in this summer. The accomplishments is that we awarded the project under budget to Drill Construction. Construction did start June 18th, 2020. Substantial completion was September 2nd, 2020. We did have a couple of challenges here. There was a lot of unforeseen existing conditions. The concrete that we had to remove out of the rooms was larger than normal, or larger than we anticipated in some of the conditions, and less in others. So it did work out nicely. Right now we've got new floors, waterproof floors, or water resistant, and new floors and base with new painted rooms. Onto the kindergarten center. This project consists of interior renovation and an elevator addition. So the lower floor, we had the multi-purpose room renovation, along with renovation of the nurses suite, and we have the addition of the elevator there. The first and second levels included classroom modifications to accommodate a kindergarten restroom within each classroom. So overall, it is a 1-story addition with a 3-story elevator shaft. Accomplishments are we awarded the project to Brahma Construction Corp. They did start construction May 26, 2020. We have a certificate of approval for interior renovations, and that was gained September 4th, 2020. This school is old. We have had a couple of challenges here. You ask me what, and I can tell you, it's an old building. We've dug up vaults. We've had thicker walls than we anticipated. We had some concrete in the nurses' room that was bulging, but it's all taken care of, and so far we are still remaining under budget. And we are well on our way. The interior renovation, as I said, is complete. The restrooms are in place. The interiors, they gained the certificate in September. The addition is still in construction. It is ongoing. This picture was probably a week old right now. So I anticipate that the elevator shaft might be to the top Once they have that done, they will start raising the steel there, so that will happen shortly. The Rutherford High School. Over the summer, we had 4 science classrooms where we performed alterations, renovations. This is a typical classroom layout that you see there. Accomplishments, we did award the project under budget to Practical Construction. They started May 26, 2020. We received our certificate of approval for the interior renovation work September 4th, 2020. The challenges that we had really have to do with a lot of lead time materials. Right now we have a temporary / permanent countertop in place. And when we work on the Mortimer wing, we actually hope to get the countertops we wanted into the bid into that one. We did have a couple of unforeseen conditions, mainly with the floors. They weren't in the best condition after we tore the finished floors and the first subfloor up. So it was a little bit of extra work, but overall it's turned out pretty good. Right now we have the casework in, as I said. We have countertops. We have Formica countertops. We will be looking at getting epoxy countertops, which are common in science classrooms. So right now you can see it is set up. We are waiting for everything to be finished. We're waiting on some last minute items with electric. At the Pierpont School, we have started, and what we have there is a 3-phased project. The first phase is the multi-purpose room. And yep, right here is a multi-purpose room. It is the first phase. It is the lower level there, which also includes some demolition that has already taken place. The second phase is the 2-story classroom addition and covered canopy to some adjacent classrooms that are not linked by an interior space. And the third phase is the renovation of the existing cafeteria. So I have an image here that'll show you what we anticipate the finished product to look like. To the right, you can see the existing building, and to the left are 2 images, elevations in perspective of the addition. Accomplishments. We awarded the project under budget to Bismarck Construction Corp. They have started construction. It was started July 22nd, 2020. The challenges thus far have been existing utilities. So far, there's just a lot of dirt that has been moved and some demolition of the locker rooms and I think a coach's office adjacent to the existing multi-purpose room. Part of the staff room has been removed and it's been temporarily weatherproof so they can use what they have right now until the new multi-purpose room is complete. So upcoming projects, we have 2 projects remaining. Well, the first one is at Union School. For Union School, we have a multi-purpose room addition with an interior renovation of the existing multi-purpose room into science labs. There will be 3 new classrooms there. This is a diagram showing the multi-purpose room with the 2 toilet room facilities and locker rooms. Here's an elevation of the entrance off of the gymnasium. And also in this project, we have the column replacement. That is actually going to be the first part of this whole project at Union is a column replacement, as well as the addition and the demolition there. This is the final phase, and it is the alteration to the gymnasium, which will be 3 classrooms, science classrooms, and a nurse's office. Accomplishments is so far, we have the notice to bidders, which went out on September 17th. The bid opening is coming up this month. It is October 21st, 2020. The good news is we have over 45 bidders so far. And that's a high number. At Rutherford High School, we have one more project remaining, which is the big one. It is the Mortimer wing. It is going to be done and includes all 3 levels. And it is a window and facade replacement of the Mortimer wing and windows in the gymnasium and locker room space. We have looked at 3 options with the school district, with Jack and Joe and a couple other at the high school. So we investigated a replacement in kind. This is design option 1. And it is a replacement. It is the most budget friendly. It is a replacement of what you have there. We will be maintaining a mechanical system that is in place, or not in place, but we will be upgrading the mechanical system, but we will still be using the unit ventilator type heating and cooling there. So we have the vents and the windows that will be replaced on that facade. That is for option 1. And option 2, we looked at possibly moving to a casement type window. We have bays. This building has structural bays, and what we anticipate doing is having 1 casement window per bay or 2 hopper windows, which is an option 1. Again, we are still maintaining a window and a vent on each facade. And what we plan on doing here, as we've looked at it with the school district, is this is something that is a little different. It gives it a little bit more of a modern feel. And what we liked about this option is that it too is budget friendly and will allow us to build upon it. So if you look at option 3, we have screens that will integrate with option 2. And by moving forward with option 2, it allows us to use our bid specifications to provide the district with an alternate. And this screen is a system we can screen such things as drains, mechanical louvers, items like that. And it gives us another design aspect. If you go to the next slide, you can see we do have a lot of options with that. Right now, if you walk out this cafeteria door, you can see along the gymnasium side, there are screens up on the gymnasium windows, and those we hope to, put something fun and interesting and something that is saying Rutherford there as some sort of a logo. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I have 3 of them.
Okay.
First one was Lincoln School.
Yes.
And we saw it when we went for one, we took a tour. There was a question as to bathrooms. The bathroom going to have a kindergarten size toilet, or is it going to have a larger one?
I believe in that school, it was a standard elementary school toilet
No,
I'd-
Lincoln School?
at Lincoln.
No, I believe we went with the kindergarten.
Oh, okay.
Because
I'd really have to check on that.
Yeah. No, that's my recollection. In fact, when we were there, only because if we ever needed the space.
We have no more room with the 8 class.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, because generally speaking, the students in the grades 1 to 3 do not need a toilet in the bathroom, in the classroom. It's a nice benefit if we
Yes.
put a grade 1, 2, or 3 class in there. But if we needed either preschool room or kindergarten room, they do need the bathroom. So my understanding is that's what we did. I think, John, right? That's what we did.
And Jack, you're right. It is floor mounted toilet, which means it is a kindergarten toilet.
Union School, the floor replacement, what is that actual material that's there now? It's not wood.
It is not wood.
No.
What we did is we provided the district with it's called LVT, which stands for luxury vinyl tile. It has less maintenance. You don't clean it the same way. There's less waxing. It's pretty much what every school district is switching to.
Anthony wanted.
Right. I don't know if I can zoom in.
Well,
And they're very basic right now.
What we could do, and I'll do tonight or probably tomorrow, is I'll forward you all the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
So you'll have a better view of it.
Is the
Right.
brick that's there now, is that remaining or is that gonna be?
So right now, we anticipate the brick to remain. It will be cleaned.
But it doesn't match the front. Is there any way that another color could be used?
No, you can't. No, not on brick.
So the red brick is gonna remain?
It's the color that is there would remain. Yes.
And the ones that we had seen earlier, there was options where that were discovered with
Right. That we've looked at other options, and we've tried to cover it. It's just we're trying to fit something within a budget too, and we know that it is a good condition, and we know that it can be cleaned and maintained.
And part of the reason for the designs you saw a long time ago is where we weren't sure of the mechanical system if we're going to have to route the new piping on the outside of the building. So those are to conceal the potential of new piping on the outside of the building, but we did our due diligence, went through the building, and the new pipes can be routed within the building. So that's why we didn't have to have those on the outside.
Ms. LeBrun?
So on the same line, just the aesthetics of the Mortimer facade are obviously very important to the community, and it's one of the main reasons, or one of the main drivers that people communicated in terms of really wanting to support the referendum. So when I looked at those images, and maybe it's just me, but I couldn't get a feel for what the renderings of the actual facade would look like. Will that be a part of the process, that there would actually be an option 1 rendering of the building, not similar, not those casements used in similar buildings, but what does the Mortimer wing look like with option 1? What does it look like with option 2? And what does it look like with option 3?
Right. And right now, what you're seeing is something that is just functional. Right now, there is no color in those elevations. We wanted to look at it from a perspective of how does everything work? How do we route the mechanical system? How do we get this to work with the existing structure? We've looked at different systems, and the next step is to look at it with different colors.
Okay. And so then, what would be the process for determining between the three options? How does that get vetted and decided upon?
Well, I think the hopper window is the first one, right? That's
Yep,
right.
that's the first one.
Is just looks like it does now, just newer. So I think the second choice makes more sense because it offers a greater variety of style, right? And then if you put the alternate or the potential for a third option. So when we do this budget now, remember we're not going out to bid late December, right? So we're still kind of away from that process. But if we look at the casement windows, if with an alternate of these screens, which allow for a lot of flexibility with design, lights, different designs, to me, the first option isn't a very good option unless the budget estimate says that the other option is way out of the water. So I think when we get to that point, similar to you saw a vision of what Union School would look like, right? Up there, and you saw a Pierpont School, what it's going to look like. I think we would have a vision of this is what the Mortimer wing would look like. And then, then you start kicking around, well, do we like that color? Do we like the screens that way? Can we at that point. So initially the conversation was, let's look at what we think, well, not we, what they thought and what Epic thought would possibly fit into the budget, right? And then the discussion was, well, what are the pros and cons? And I think the obvious negative of the first one is spend a lot of money for something that's going to look just like the old one, just a different color, right? Where we used to laugh about, 58 building and Brady Bunch look and all that. So you get into a much more contemporary, but still you could design it in a way that is not too contemporary for the community or for the rest of the building. So the short answer to all that is, once we are a little bit more confident, I guess, on where the budget lands, we come up with a more of an elevation and a view of potentially what it looks like. And time frame, I don't know. The time frame of that is next month or so.
Right. And we've already given our, I guess, 50%, 75% designs to the construction manager for a more thorough estimate.
Right. And
So-
and that was a positive review
Yep.
where we think, and we've had a couple of negative 50, 75% on a few of the projects where
Right.
we were a little nervous about, but luckily when we went forward, all turned out okay, right? This one's more positive, which then gives a little more flexibility into looking at these alternates, which would, spruce up the building and give us more control over it.
Mr. Healy?
Pierpont, you mentioned existing utility challenges, and we know we had one. Has the vendor responded sufficiently regarding future changes and procedures and notifications? Do you feel confident they're?
I do. It took a good stern letter, but I do feel confident that they heard us.
Yes, it was a three-front conversation from the district, from PSA, from Epic Management, with a very direct letter, and there has been an immediate improvement.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, and we actually stopped by the site multiple times following the notification of the utilities, and John was actually there the night after our meeting with the contractor, so they know we're watching them.
Thank you.
Ms. Ahmed?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I really couldn't tell by the pictures on the photo in high school. And I don't mean to be sarcastic, but it looked like the boards in Star Trek, with the little windows. I didn't see any kind of partitions where it was solid.
It is hard to see and to grasp because it is black and white, but I will tell you that's all the further we are right now. We did enlarge a little section. I think it'll be easier for you to see once you get the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, I'll get that to you, like I said, tonight, tomorrow. You open it up. It's it is it is not what the building's going to look like, but it's a concept of what it's going to look like. But you can see it much.
Yeah,
better.
and our next step is to develop it in color. Once we review it again with the estimate, the construction manager and the design committee, and right, we're waiting for the last bid opening to come in too.
Okay, and I have one more question about Pierpont School, the gym. You said you were adding on, I guess, locker rooms or something, right? Is the gym gonna be any bigger itself?
Yeah.
Yes, the gym for Pierpont is bigger than the existing gym right now. Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry?
A couple of questions. First, the kindergarten center elevator.
Yes.
Estimated completion?
I want to say the estimated completion is either February or March, but I'd really have to go and check.
Yeah, I think it is March or maybe early April.
Any lead
So-
time issues with, because I know we were facing some.
Right now we do have some issues with the state, just the DCA reviewing everything. That has been a ongoing issue, but the good news is that our permits are in now. They have started the review. I know that we've had the submittal in for quite a while, so from our standpoint, there's nothing holding it up. We are waiting on the state though, so.
Second question to back up Ms. Jones and Mr. Brown, as far as the renderings and stuff, will you be showing a rendering with the existing, with the windows that are going in and the existing brick? Because I think that contrast, with the community, it's, let's all take the Xanadu and what that was, the comparison there.
Yeah, and we are going in that direction. We just aren't there yet.
Okay. I just want to make sure we see if there's a rendering.
It'll be similar to the ones you saw for Pierpont or Union.
I'm sorry, if I may, my notes show that the elevator should be done by the end of April. I
Okay,
don't think
April.
that's accelerated.
February, no. Yep, April.
Mr. Conti? You-
Yeah, regarding the gyms at Pierpont and Union, do you have couldn't tell in the drawing. Is it, obviously it's a basketball court, but is there multiple hoops? You know, is there a divider for it?
I
Is there
know
safety
yeah.
systems in there, scoreboards, things of that nature?
At both Union and Pierpont, there's a divider in the gym. So that room can be divided into 2 rooms. And there are basketball courts on each side. So half court, you know, you have the gym in half, and then there's basketball hoops on either side too. So you could run a gym station on each side for basketball. It also includes volleyball on both sides.
And scoreboards.
And bleachers and scoreboards, yes.
Bleachers in Pierpont School will be similar to what you see in Washington Lincoln, with bleachers on one side because there's a stage at
Yes,
Pierpont.
correct.
Because they don't have an auditorium. In Union School, there'll be bleachers on both sides, I believe.
Yes.
Because there's no need for a stage there because of the existing auditorium.
Ms. LeBear?
So it's very helpful to see some of these images tonight. I don't know if I've just missed them, but I don't think I've seen, you know, some of these renderings and been able to picture some of the buildings as they're planned. Are there more renderings somewhere that we could see, something like, say, the inside of the buildings, the inside of the gyms? I need to look. I'll look back at it when you send out the PowerPoint. I was having a hard time sort of with all the different elevations in terms of where things were. I want to focus in on that a bit more. But are there more renderings that we can see?
We
at
have
this point?
floor plans. We have interior elevations, but we don't have any renderings of the interior.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is that
I
something
think
that-
when you look at the gyms, though, in particular, they're very clear. I mean, it's hard. They're not clear when you're looking at the screen, but they're very clear size and functionality. Both of them would be able to handle, based on the logistics, you know, interscholastic high school games in either basketball or volleyball. So, from a size perspective, they're fine. But I think you'll be able to get a better view when you see that up
Well,
close.
this set of slides.
Yeah, I mean, even just you can see what the gym looks like, and you can have an understanding of what it looks like. You can see the court lines, you can see the bleachers, you know, things like
Okay.
that.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback on that just because the Union gym and the Pierpont gym are aesthetically very different looking. So just in terms of understanding what to expect, I'm assuming it might look closer to one gym than the other, or it might just look.
You mean
completely
interior
different.
or exterior?
Well, I'm talking about the interior.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Pierpont gym has a stage, where the Union gym does not have a stage. Both have the same sort of amenities for, you know, basketball, volleyball, dividing curtain. There is just one set of bleachers on the Pierpont side, whereas Union there is 2.
Right. I think Pierpont is going to look very much like Washington and Lincoln. Larger.
Okay.
Larger, but very much like it. Where Union will look more, and again, I don't mean look like, it's not like a gym that was built in 1958, will be more like the high school gym with bleachers on both sides and that type of thing.
Gotcha. That's helpful. Mrs. Ahmed?
I know when we did Washington School, it wasn't elevation for high school, like basketball games and stuff. Is that the high elevation like for high school kids also?
So for both of those schools, the main backboards are adjustable. The other ones are set, I believe, at elementary levels. But the main court basketball hoops are an adjustable hoop.
Yeah, we'd be able to run high school practices
But
and games there.
you can't. The games are the lines are not for high school games.
Right, well, the main court I think will be though.
Maybe at Pierpont.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it both.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it both. But yeah, there, you know, the intention is not to play high school games there. You know, the intention is to be able to allow to have practice, and they will be fine for practice. Washington and Lincoln are fine for practice. We just can't get into them sometimes because of before and after care. You know, but they're fine for practice. So they were made. Mr. Frazier was involved in the conversation, and for those of you that are, you know, over the age of 30, probably remember I had something to do with basketball for a while around here. So I took a good look at that. So I think we'll be okay. I might even come out of retirement to coach again.
Mr. Healy?
Yeah, one last one for me. The Kinder Center, 2021 will no longer need the waivers. Is that on track?
I'm sorry,
The waivers for the bathrooms will
waivers are no longer
will
needed.
not needed,
Right.
okay.
The bathrooms are all functioning this year. They would not have been needed. Well, yes, it would have been needed this year if we didn't complete, but we were completed, so they're all functioning, so there's no need for waivers anymore.
All right, Mr. Conti?
Yeah, so the Mortimer ring here, what's, I'm assuming you have a plan as far as, do you see any issues with executing it in a timely fashion? You know, being able to do all that work before the school start, before the year starts?
So this is, Mortimer Wing is actually a 2-summer project.
Okay.
It is not a 1-summer project. The first summer is phased into mechanical and abatement and new floors. And the second summer is the facade. So the first summer, the facade will stay the same. It's all on the inside. And the second summer is the facade.
And we have had several meetings going back, I'd say prior, before we even had a discussion about what anything was going to look like, right? About how to get this done with, what, about 45 classrooms?
There's a lot.
And offices and gymnasiums, cafeteria, right? All being impacted. So, and we're looking, we spent, Mr. Morano, Mr. Barry, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Paterno, PSA, Epic, and I, we walked the building a couple of times looking at, if we're looking at segments, what segments are we talking about? So that if there's a segment that isn't ready, how many classrooms does that mean? Can we then move those classes if we have to open? We talked about how to, chop some time at the end of the year where maybe there's more availability with high school students to move them. Quite frankly, when I look at the calendar for next year, I have to look to see, that's a double-edged sword, because if you pick up time on one end of it, you lose time on the other end of it, right? But work with the architects and with Epic to say, where would you rather get the time? Would you rather us start a little later or end a little earlier, that type of thing. So, but it is going to be a challenge. It's a lot of classrooms. You saw up on the slides when Rachel pointed out, right, that you run into unsuspecting obstacles, right? So you run into some of those, and the next thing you know, you're slowed down. So it's going to be a challenge, but we've been working on that. It's I'm not going to lie about it. It's going to be a challenge, but we certainly have been planning for it and trying to figure out how to get it done.
And we will actually start construction prior to the school year being dismissed, where we are doing things internally at night.
Right. Yeah, we're hoping, right, like maybe depending on how the bids come in and when the bid gets awarded, starting in March or April with night work to try to get a head start on it.
Mrs. Jones?
That area that has a big drop in front of the building, I'm always worried that kids gonna fall in there and get hurt. Will the new construction not have that?
There still is an areaway that will be there. There are classrooms down there that do need natural light, so we have to maintain that. So that will still be there. Yes, we are putting in new railing that will match the facade and be to code.
One of the things I just want to piggyback on my answer from before regarding, figuring all this out. Keep in mind, too, that you have several hallways that are part of this wing, right? So it's not just a question of balancing when the classrooms are, because you have egress you have to be concerned about. So this, I think we'll be fine, as fine as we can be, but it's been probably as much or more conversation about that than about some of the actual construction part of it,
Which summer, 22, 23, 21, 22?
Summer of 2021, 2022.
Are there any other questions? You've all asked my questions.
So just one more date question then. So the Mortimer project is the final project, is the tail. So what is the projected end date for the overall set of projects?
For all the projects, I'll have to look at it again. I know it's the end of the summer of 2022, but I can't tell you if that's October, November, because there's still some
Okay.
Right.
No, that's
ongoing
fine.
work. I just can't remember that
Yeah, I think
date.
early, Jody, you have that there?
Yeah, my notes say September. So
Okay,
maybe
there you
some
go.
punch list items
Right.
after that, but.
Yep.
Of 22.
Thank you.
Other questions? No? Well, I want to say thank you to both of you for coming, and I know we've asked a lot of questions, but it's because we're fully engaged and want to make sure that we've got the best interest of all the projects, and we have as full an understanding as we can. So really appreciate everything that you've been able to share with us this evening. We look forward to getting a copy of that PowerPoint as well, just so we can have a little time to digest it all.
Yep, we'll send that out to you, like I said, tonight. And just one other comment, we have, every Wednesday, we have construction meetings. 2 1 week and 3 the next, and we'll be adding more, I guess, as we go through. With the contractors, the representatives from PSA and Epic Management. And, you saw it before, the names up there, but there's always 2, 3, 4 people from PSA. There are, architects and other staff, in addition to Rachel and John, who are on each building and focusing on that building. So it's been a tremendous team effort from them, and a lot of support and daily communication. And the same from Epic. The 2 site managers, John and Johan, have been great. And Bill Morrow, who I think you've all met before, he's been at a couple of the meetings. So it really has been an outstanding team effort, a lot of support, a lot of information. So I want to thank you for that. And we've got a lot done, but we've got the real big ones. I mean, Pierpont, the Mortimer wing is a tough one, right, to handle. But Pierpont, we're essentially building a school, if you think about it, right? A big gym and 11 classes and 2, 3 offices and a lot of space. It's, the size, almost the size of what Washington and Lincoln might, it's almost a school. And that's going to be a massive undertaking. And Union, too, a lot of work being done. So the big projects are to come. And look forward, I guess I look forward. We're going to look forward to the work we're going to do, because the finish is going to be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay, so we are going to move on now to the report of the superintendent.
Okay, thank you. I want to take a little bit of time tonight to read through the REF grant award winners. As you know, every year, this is usually the meeting that we invite the recipients of the grants, the teachers, and we invite the REF presidents president to come, and we recognize the grants are awarded in the spring. The board accepts the grants usually in June, but it's a nice way to both let the community know what our teachers are doing and what they're coming up with in terms of initiative, and also what the REF is doing to support us. We appreciate what the teachers and staff are doing, and we certainly appreciate what the REF is doing. I met with the REF Administrative Board, and this is going to be a challenging year for the REF, as it is for any group trying to raise funds. Things like casino night and wine tasting and Devils games and Wizards games and things like that, don't look too promising. And if they are able to come about, it's going to be a mad rush at some point later in the year. So, we talked about some ideas and some things that could be happening and the way the district could help in those ideas. We also talked about some of the grants that were awarded. And, some of them may not be able to be done this year because of the nature of the grant. But we talked about, holding that money, and, we talked about whether or not that money should go back or whether it should stay, carrying the grant over, because none of these have a shelf life. We can do them next year. And especially in a year that maybe it'll be a little tougher for the REF to fund some grants if the fundraising isn't there. And I also want to say that the foundation asked if there was anything we needed right now with whatever funding they may have to help us get through these difficult times. And although, at the moment we were okay and I reserve the right to come back and knock on the door, if we have to. So I'm very appreciative of the REF, former past president here, and I know some of you are members, and I am very appreciative of what they've done, and this year was a really outstanding year. So let me just get to that. The overall grants this year were $80,731.50, and that's an amazing number. Earlier in the year, they awarded $38,506 to jumpstart seed money, more or less, for a lacrosse program at the high school, and for a media grant for a projector system in the auditorium. So if you've been into the auditorium, some of you have been for opening day meetings, things like that. We had that big cart in the middle with a projector. Now we have a ceiling-mounted projector and is up and running, and Mr. Morano told me it is fabulous. It's working wonderfully, and so it's a big improvement for faculty meetings, staff development, community meetings, and the like. So we appreciate that. And then there was another $42,225.50 awarded at the traditional time for the grants later in the spring last year. So I'm going to quickly read through them just so you have an idea of what they were and if we would be presenting. So we had a school-wide shoe tying challenge at Washington School. Lynn McShane was the nurse there obviously for students to work on tying their shoes. Public speaking from the Future Teachers Club at Rutherford High School with Mr. Stracco and Mr. Stacy. A grant for reflex math fluency and interactive math at Pierpont School from the 4th grade teachers. A women in STEM program, which has been a recurring. You might hear some of these grants come up every year because they're valuable. That's why I said carrying the money over is not a problem, because we don't want these programs to be 1 year. Either we'll try to fund them or we'll out of the budget, or we'll try to get the grant again, right? Because they're worthwhile. So women in STEM at the high school with Ms. Curtis and Ms. Nastasi. Student voice in math, classroom using whiteboard tables. So whiteboard tables in a classroom at Union Middle School with Ms. Master Filippo. Comforts in co-teaching, flexible seating for second graders in Washington School, second grade teachers. And again, some of these things, man, we were looking every way we could to get flexible seating, and now we're back to desk and rows, right? But one day we'll be back to the flexible seating, and this will be helpful then. Musical chairs in the elementary classroom. Again, it's trying to equip different types of desk and flip stools in the 3rd grade class at Washington School. Flexible seating at Union Middle School for 7th grade, Ms. Cuccaro. Seat sacks at the kindergarten center to hang, sacks on the back of the chairs for students to keep supplies in, so there's not as much getting up and running to a cubby or something like that, that would be one grant that's really going to be helpful right now, where we're trying to limit some of the movement around. And that's Ms. Park at the kindergarten center. Flexible seating at the kindergarten center. Again, Ms. Park and Ms. Sayer. Mindfulness recess room at Pierpont School. Some of the things to be using in terms of our growth mindset and mental wellness and SEL, social emotional learning, Ms. Mahoney and Ms. Saxon. Thankful for Rutherford in Washington School, Ms. Rossiter, about that Thanksgiving Day parade that gets run every year to try to enhance that and get a little more a little more oomph to it. Heroes and Cool Kids, which has been partially funded by the REF for years, a program of high school students going down to work with Pierpont students, and that's Mr. Bergen and Mr. Parnafiello. A spirit club at the high school to have students in different age groups coming together with some team building and a competitive, almost like Spirit Week, extended out a little bit, and that was Dr. Hopkins. The RHS library, which is now called Learning Commons, to get more of an ebook collection going to increase. That was a $5,000 grant. You get a lot of ebooks with that, right? Ms. Mayo. A 3D printer and workforce skill development program for the Bulldog Academy with Mr. Guy. Building language through interactive games at Washington Preschool with Ms. Zeswick. Lincoln School, moving and grooving with pedometers, phys ed program to have students keep track of how much their fitness program is, Mr. Potter. Learning centers at the K Center to provide different hand-on activities through computer programming, Ms. Aruglio at the Kindergarten Center. The Joys of Gingerbread, a second grade, a gingerbread unit to be used among second graders there. 3D printing, not getting a 3D printer, but taking the computer club at the high school to field trips to Liberty Science Center. Again, not happening this year, but could be happening next. Or maybe in the spring, we'll see how things go. Miss Stacy. Publishing children's books for the high school creative writing class, Miss Dugard. Graphing calculators to be used middle school by Miss Ely, and a green team initiative at Pierpont School with Mr. Bach. So you could see, I know I went through that quickly, but on those grants, you have technology, you have athletics, you have the arts, you have grades from K to the 18 to 21 program. So again, I really do applaud the teachers for their initiative to come up with the grant ideas, and the REF for their support. Student, any comments or questions about that?
I just wanted to say that I think I joined the REF about 12 years ago, and there might have been 10 board members. They raised $20,000. Everything that came in went out, so there was literally nothing left in the budget at the end of the year. And the way in which the REF has grown over the years to see over $80,000 in grants and the kind of revenue they've had has been phenomenal. I know the last 3 years, Christina Coles, the president, did a wonderful job, and she's handed it over to a new president, Andy Mikowski, at a time that is not going to be easy. And so I think if there are any events that are happening, they're going to be limited, smaller types of events. So I think anything the community can do to support them will be greatly appreciated for sure.
100%. In the agenda is the student safety data system that annually I have to report to the board. And you'll see that for those of you who don't remember or are not familiar, it has a violence, which things that have to get reported to the state for suspensions are violence, vandalism, substance abuse, weapons, and those things. Violence sounds like a very harsh word, but it's basically an altercation with kids. You'll notice that for the year, we had 2 acts of violence or altercation in the entire district. We had 3 total for substance, 1 for a weapon. Again, weapon, could be a penknife, right? 10 HIB confirms, and then other incidents leading to removal, 78. That means things like excessive tardiness or failure to comply with a directive, or speaking out of turn, or inappropriate language, or things like that. And there's a 7 HIB alleged for the year, and there were 10 HIB confirmed. Those numbers are very good, but keep in mind, they are much lower than other years, but not that much lower. But keep in mind, we also did not have students in the building from March on. So this is not a year really to do much comparison or contrasting, right, because of that. Basically, a third of the year was spent in remote learning. But those are the numbers. And then you're familiar with the self-assessment we do. I have to report on that every year too, and that's based on trainings and programs that we do. And you'll see those listed at the bottom. For the trainings and programs are both for students and faculty and staff. Okay? Any questions on that? I'd like to mention that, sometimes we've talked here for many years about, we need to communicate better. Sometimes we hear that from the public, and we always say, well, we do a lot of communication. How can we do it better? Well, I'm very happy to report that the New Jersey School Public Relations Association's School Communication Awards program has awarded the Rutherford District with an award. Now, we're not sure. It's either going to be first, second, or third. There were 75 different submissions to be judged. And on Friday, October 16th, there's going to be a virtual award ceremony, and Mr. Kelly is going to represent us by attending that virtually. And we will be getting an award from the public relations group, from the state school public relations group, based on our communication efforts. And I think when you look at the website that we put together for the reopening, the website that we put together for the referendum project and now the facility project, certainly we have increased the use of our social media with, not only the district, but buildings and our athletic program and our arts program. So, I'm glad that it's always nice to be recognized, and I'm glad that our work in communications is paying off. Again, our communication consultants have been a big help, but also the teachers who worked on developing those websites. Members of the community that worked and helped us out, like Mr. Conti going back and others on the referendum. It's in the IT department helping us out. So it really has been a good effort. So once we find out if we're first, second, or third, I'll let you know. But we're pleased about that. Phase 2 of our reopening, we had 802 students who were remote in phase 1, currently are remote. That came out to be about 69% of the students returning. I know when we first did the results, we said it was like 73% coming back, but then some students, have opted to go remote as they came back, but you couldn't go the other way, right? So that number grew a little bit so we have about 69% students back in. Of the 802, 211 have opted to return come October 16th. So that brings our remote number down to 591, and it brings our percentage up to about 79% in the building. Now, keep in mind, like everything else that's been going on here and in the country, this is all fluid, right? Students might choose to go out, things could change, but right now that was over 25% of the students who were remote opted to come back, okay? And that phase would begin on October the 19th. So what's happening tomorrow, in fact, is I'm meeting with the steering committee again. We're going through the plan, and we're looking at things that may or may not change. There won't be any real major changes, but there's subtle things that you didn't allow that you may allow as we move forward, okay? And then we'll go from there, okay? The next phase will end on November 26th, I think, with whatever it is right before Thanksgiving. And then November 30th, or whatever the date is when we come back from Thanksgiving, would be when that phase starts again. And that seems like a long way off, but it's already October, and you look at the Teachers Convention and Election Day and Thanksgiving, and that's not such a long way off. Let me just touch, we do have a Board of Ed student rep, Raj Parikh, and he will be joining us at the next meeting. It was a little later this year because the elections were not held till later. And I mentioned in the information I sent home, Elaine Brown, a senior at the high school, winning a national recognition for choir, which is very nice, so we congratulate her. Let me briefly touch upon the union school situation, and I want to talk about it in more general terms, because the letter that went out to union school parents and so on, that's specific to that. But let me just talk generally about why things or how things transpire, okay? So the New Jersey Department of Health published guidelines in August, which they then updated on September 13th. Those guidelines are found on our website, and it spells out what the guidance is for any possible thing that may happen. A confirmed case, presumed case, someone ill without it being a confirmed case, it goes right down the line. It ties it in with your risk factor, whether it's green, yellow, or red in the area of the state. It's tied in with whether things happen in school or out of school. It has rules and regulations about how many hours someone was last in school before symptoms arise, and there's a whole list of items you have to look at. So if someone is a faculty, staff, or student is found to be positive, the nurse, the principal, or me, or some combination thereof, right? We have to gather a lot of information quickly, and then we reach out to the Board of Health, and we provide that information. When was the test done for being positive? When was the student or staff member in school? What was their schedule? What school were they in? What was their date list? So on and so forth, right? They ask questions that they need, and if there's answers we don't have, either we have to go get the answers or they go get the answers, right? Then they reach out. As you know, the Rutherford Board of Health is under the auspices of the Bergen County Board of Health. So then they reach out to the County Board of Health. And often we then have a conversation with three of us, or they convey the information back. And we walk through the scenario of whatever the scenario may have been, right? And then based on those guidelines from the New Jersey Department of Health, based on the interpretation of the information provided to the county and the local Board of Health, and determining based on the situation that may or may be unique, they basically tell us what we need to do, or tell us what we need to do with a suggestion of what we might want to do. Okay? So if you had hypothetically a student, oh, and by the way, I mean, when I say this, I'm not going to give out details about Union School because there are laws still in effect, right? Like HIPAA and FERPA and things like that, you don't, right? But today, I would say 5.5 hours of my time and the nurse's time and the principal's time and the Board of Health was spent on. I mean, this is not like a, oh, by the way, here's the answer, okay? I mean, it's a time-consuming process, and it should be, right? So let's say one student in grade 2 tests positive, or a teacher in grade 2 tests positive in a classroom where the students don't change classes. What may happen, doesn't have to happen, again, what may, depending on the case, is that class may be told to quarantine, to stay home for 14 days because they were in the classroom with the other student. Now, if I want to make sure everybody understands this, and anybody who may be watching or whoever watches the video, by definition, and in the state guidelines, in the template of the letter that the Department of Health gives us, the New Jersey Department of Health gives all schools, to use as a model for any situation that may come up. If you see a letter goes out and you say, wow, they put that together quick, that's because we get a template from the Department of Health and then we can adjust it according to our needs. They define anybody that has to be quarantined as being in close contact. And they define in the letter that close contact is 6 feet or less for 10 minutes or more. And the argument in the more classical definition of the word argument, right, the discussion point that you can make, is that with students sitting in desks 6 feet apart with masks on, it's very few that would be 6 feet or less for 10 consecutive minutes. So, you get into this discussion about what's close contact. And if you define close contact, for the most part, because even if students are changing classrooms and they're walking in the hallway, they have to change class in 2 to 3 minutes. They're not by anybody for 10 consecutive minutes. So that's where that term, the abundance of caution, comes in, right? You're in a class. Logically, you're not in close contact, but you're also in class with this person. So the guidelines suggest that the students in that class should quarantine. The teacher should quarantine. So if you're in grade 2 and 3, it's 20 kids, 15 kids, whatever's in the room, right? Stay home, and that teacher stays home, and they could work remotely or whatever. But if you're in the middle school, or if you're in the high school, you now look at what classes this student go to. And then you look at, and remember now, we're in those buildings, and in Pierpont School, right? Pierpont is less changing. They pretty much stay together, but there'll be additional teacher involved. So it's really in grades 7 to 12, you say, okay, how many classes were they in? Now, again, you can make the argument, and again, I don't mean argument like arguing, I mean the discussion, right? Of, well, they're in the class for 35 or 40 minutes, and they're not close to the person for 10 minutes. But again, abundance of caution, right? So now you might have 30 students, because remember, we're in a hybrid situation. So you might have 30 students, you might have 40 students who need or suggested to stay home, which, okay, is fine. They stay home for a few days. They go and they log in, right? Because now we're equipped to do that. But now you don't have one teacher anymore. Now you have 5 or 6 or 7 teachers. And again, you could make the argument, right? Well, the kid was sitting in the back row and you're in the front row. But again, abundance of caution. So now when you have 6 or 7 teachers that have to stay out, you can no longer staff your building. Because, getting subs is hard to do on a normal time. Harder to do during this time. And when you have 7 out for 10 consecutive days, impossible to do. So what I want people to understand is the result of something is not always indicative of a school-wide problem, but it's indicative of, can you provide, do you want to mitigate? You want to do that abundance of caution, and can you run school? So the example I gave in K to 3, we could run school because one class, one teacher is home. In 7 to 12, may not be able to run school. So the decision then to go remote with the whole school is based on staffing. And quite frankly, that decision was made relatively late in the process because we were looking at the possibility of being able to staff. Because, you don't want to tell 200 and, well, it's more because it's both cohorts, right? The school shut down. So you're telling, 400 students stay home for 2 weeks when really there's only 30 or 40 that might have to. But you have to be able to staff. So I just want people to understand the process, okay? It's not haphazard. It's not unilateral. It's based on the guidelines that comes through several filters, right? The Department of Health of the state, the Department of Health of the county, the local Department of Health. They get some of their stuff from CDC and DOE. So you have all these different filters coming in, right? Our school nurse. Sometimes we include our school physician. Myself, the principal, is a lot of filters. And then the last filter is anytime there's an incident, within 24 hours, I have to give a report to the county Department of Education, without names of this is what happened, bullet, when did the symptoms show, when, all the stuff I have to give to the Department of Health. I have to report on what my conversation was with the Department of Health, what the recommendation was, what we did as a district, and then that goes to Hackensack, and then it goes to Trenton. So if there's ever a red flag somewhere, well, you should have done this, you should, money, we're going to hear about it because that goes through 2 filters. So, look, the virus is still here. The numbers are very low. We had gone, I think I said 9 days or something without a positive test, or 8 days in Rutherford, or the numbers are low. We have one now. The numbers are low, right? But it doesn't mean it's gone. And this will not be the only time that we're going to have to deal with this. And we're going to have to come up with, and it may be a class is going to stay home, or it may be a class doesn't have to stay home, because again, the circumstances and the detail of when did symptoms show, when was the person in school, when do they have the test, dictate what the response is. And what people have to understand and trust is that the reason why one situation might be handled one way and the other is handled different is because they're different situations. And we cannot, nor should we, give details of a person's medical condition. But we have to respond accordingly. We've had a lot of discussions in this room and in the auditorium upstairs and in a lot of other places about the security and the safety of students. That has not been a big topic for the last 6 or 7 months, right? Gun violence, shooting, all this stuff, right? In fact, we even have a relaxation of how we're doing drills. We're doing them, but we're doing them in a slightly different manner under the direction of the state of New Jersey. But to me, the weight of that is still very much real for me. I mean, ultimately, I have to answer, both professionally and ethically and morally. So, we're not looking to do anything but what the right thing is. But there is not one right thing. It's situationally driven. Okay? And just like with a safety issue in terms of violence or in terms of a threat, I'm trained. I spend a lot of time on it. I went to all kinds of training all over the state, but I am not a law enforcement expert. So I partner with the police and follow their direction. And the same way I am trained on this topic, I'm probably closer to being a law enforcement expert than I am to a medical expert. So I partner with the health department and follow their lead, follow their guidelines, ask questions so that we know we're doing the right thing. So that's an overview. And I think you could figure out what to apply to today's circumstances. And I'm sorry, I know we had a report tonight, but I thought the things that we went over certainly were important to go over, so I wanted to take a little time with that. Last comment, the Board of Ed Awards, I put in my communication to you. Well, actually, two last comments. You know me, I'm always good for a last and then the real last comment. Board of Ed Awards, we can't have them this year like we normally do. Students will be recognized with a letter, and if and when we can do a ceremony this year, we will. A very large number of students this year, about 240 or something like that. I mean, honestly, I don't know if we'd fit everybody. If two parents came, I don't know if we'd fit everybody in the auditorium. But so that's a nice thing. But obviously, with those numbers, we can't. So we will send a letter from the high school congratulating them and their parents, and we will present them with the appropriate pin so that they have it. But then, if the time allows later in the year to do the ceremony, we will.
Will we get a list of
I have to check on that because again, these stupid laws. I didn't say stupid laws. These laws that say you can't even post honor roll list up on a board anymore. I will double check. I don't see why the board can't get that list, but I'll just double check. Okay. And the last thing is the committee meetings in October, whenever that date is scheduled. I think it's October 19th. We'll be doing finance and building and grounds for a little more discussion and update on referendum-related stuff, like similar to what we did the last time we met. Okay, we do have some policies that just came in today. I didn't really get a chance to look at them too thoroughly. They look like some don't even apply to us. They're policies we don't have and don't need to have. Some seem like very perfunctory type things. Once I get a chance to read them, I'll send them forward. We can decide what to do. Okay? And thank you for your patience. If you have any questions, I'm finally finished.
Mr. Mizzou.
Not a question per se, but just a comment. In response to the Union School temporary closure, move to remote learning, I actually applaud the district for the move. Jack, we see how hard the administrators, have worked throughout the district. The global pandemic has impacted every single person, certainly in this room, in our community. While I appreciate it can cause an imposition for some families and parents because of work schedules and balancing it, I think the abundance of caution is exactly the way to go. I think that, following the guidance from the health providers is the way to go. And, I think we're in a pandemic, so stay flexible. This may not be the first or last time we're doing this. And I just want you have, on my behalf as Vice President of the Board, you have 100% support.
Well, I appreciate that. And I know that it's true. I always feel that way from the board. And just to say, any decision that's been made on the district's response to how to go forward, going back to March until today, is always going to be mixed with mixed reviews. Sometimes more positives than negatives. Sometimes that's just the nature of what we're dealing with right now. We have always been driven. I think the board's been driven by it. I know the administration has certainly been driven by it. Doing what is in the best interest for the safety, the health, and the education of the students. So, and you're right, this will not be the only time that we have somebody positive, and we'll have to deal with the steps I outlined before.
Well, I just want to echo what Mr. Mazzone eloquently put and say that I appreciate your transparency in sharing it and sharing your process and your thinking during a public open meeting. Because I think it really speaks volumes to helping the community to understand, so there is a little bit more predictability and transparency of thought to really, really tough decisions like this. So.
Yeah. And I would hope that if people asked, a question, when Mr. Met has his up on the video, I could point them to the minute that they could fast forward to, and they could listen to it, because I think it would clarify at least the process for people. Not to put any pressure on Mr. Met to get this up and running soon, but
Any comments or questions for Mr. Hurley before we move on? Okay, hearing none. Next, we have the report of the president. So just two comments I wanted to make. During opening meetings for all the faculty in the Rutherford district, it is a tradition that the board president speak in front of all the faculty and staff to welcome them to a new year. Wasn't able to do that this year, so I talked to Mr. Hurley and decided I'd write an email to the faculty and staff. So I wrote an email, and Mr. Hurley passed it on. And one of the things I said in my email toward the end was that know that throughout this year that we see you and we appreciate you. And I think more than ever, seeing the kind of flexibility that the district's going to have, it puts a lot on everyone, the administrators and also the faculty and staff, and just want to acknowledge that. Just being in a classroom and having to teach students in person and see remote students, it's a lot. So kudos, and know that you have the Board of Education's appreciation and support for all the hard work and everything you're doing. I also wanted to thank, obviously, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Hurley, for your hard work, the principals, everyone in the district. I want to thank the families also for their patience, their understanding, but also continuing to ask questions. If you have questions, always encouraged to email the building principal, Mr. Hurley. I know as board members, you at times get questions, so you can feel free. I know some of you have emailed me. 90% of the time I'm going to Mr. Hurley. I think the close communication loop to know that we are fulfilling our duty to try to be responsive, but also being accurate with the information we have is really important. And we're in an unpredictable time. So if you're not 100% sure, you reach out to me or reach out to Mr. Hurley for things that come up. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention, just as a thought and a reminder. So I know a number of board members are liaison reps to the different schools, the PTAs. And so as you're thinking about speaking at those and like what are good things, messages, and things that you may want to bring up, I can just tell you a couple things that I think about that I think are helpful. The first thing is it's always helpful to look at the most recent meeting minutes. Because if you look at the most recent meeting minutes, you're going to have information that was shared during these Board of Ed open meetings that not everyone always has the time to be able to come to. And I sort of think about the trifecta of three things, something about the referendum, the facilities projects that are going on, so that people know that things are moving and doing well, and that we're doing our job to make sure that strategically we know what's happening. The second is obviously with things that are happening with the new normal in schools right now, and anything that is a recent development that might make sense, even if it's as simple as just saying that we're kept up to date with things that are going on by Mr. Hurley. If you don't have an answer to a question because times are a little different, here's who you reach out to. And then the third thing is just really being able to help people see that there's still the normal course of business happening. So as you think about the meeting minutes, there are things that we do every year that are a typical part of, committee meetings, budget formation, evaluations, all those things. So just instilling that these are different times, but we're also, running the normal course of business on top of everything. So just wanted to share that as some thoughts and feedback, and that's pretty much all I have. I'll keep it brief. Any questions or comments for me? I figure if I continue to keep my president remarks brief, we'll keep getting 100% attendance of board members coming in person. So, all right, hearing no comments, we're going to move on to the open to the public portion of the meeting at 8:51 p.m. So we're going to start with anyone who's in person tonight. If you have anything you'd like to say, you can come up to the microphone. Okay. Hearing none, then we'll go to those who are on Zoom. If there is anyone who'd like to make a comment that is related to agenda items, you can do so by unmuting yourself, say your name and address, and just a couple of quick reminders. We are trying to ask that everyone keep their comments to 3 minutes. It's not the favorite part of my role to cut people off after 3 or 4 minutes, so if you can do your part, that's always appreciated. And also, full transparency, part of the goal of the open portion of the meetings is not necessarily a back and forth, but it's an opportunity for you to be able to make comments that you want the board, superintendent, business administrator to know. So if we don't comment, we are taking notes and appreciate everything that you have to share with us. So, okay, so does anyone have any comments they want to share? No? Okay, hearing none, then at 8:52 p.m., we're going to close that portion of the open meeting to the public. And we are going to move on to new business where there is action to be taken. So we are going to start out with personnel. Mrs. Ahmed.
Mr. President, I'd like to move the following resignations as follows. Number 1, Carol Drews as a long-term substitute computer literacy teacher at the high school. 2, Melissa Daynard to accept her resignation as a teacher assistant at Union.
Shelley, can you speak into the microphone, please?
Just move the mic a little closer. There you go.
3, Sarah, this is a hard one, Golan Apur as a lunch monitor at Lincoln School, her resignation, and the resignation also of Jack Madden. Number 4, building care counselor for the Bulldog Care Program. 5, Caitlin Walker to approve as a teacher assistant at Union. 6, Daniel O'Connor, part-time teacher assistant at Pierpont. Number 7 is Caitlin McIver to approve her as a part-time teacher assistant at Pierpont School also. 8, Karen Skirbo to approve her as a lunch monitor at Lincoln School. 9, salary level changes. The following level changes effective September through June 30th. Andrew Vanderhoof, Michael DeBila, and Matthew Vaccaro. 10, Robin Coben to approve as increase of hours. 11, Nicole Ely. Can't read my writing here, I'm sorry. Disability leave with pay. 12, and that's for the maternity leave. 12, John Ford as a long-term substitute math teacher at Union School. 13, Amanda Taza, another maternity leave with pay for Amanda Taza, elementary teacher. 14, FFCRA leaves, that's the Family First Coronavirus I can't read this. If I put my glasses on, it fogs up, so I can't see anything. Sorry. Okay. Response Act, the FFCRA, and that would be they're taking a leave. And 15, sixth class to approve a $500 stipend for a full year course to the following teacher. Approve Assunta Smith in the high school. 16, high school co-curricular. to approve or rescind the following high school assignments for the 2021 school year. That's rescind Cassandra Imperator for band front director. And approve Assunta Smith, Spanish club advisor, and Joseph Caveza for band front director. 17, middle school co-curricular. To approve or rescind the following, it's rescind Assunta Smith for a world language club stipend, and Assunta Smith, 8th grade co-class advisor. Also, there's to approve Maria Rodriguez as World Language Club. Maria Rodriguez is 8th grade class co-advisor. And Alexis Kubek for a yearbook advisor. 18, Bulldog Care Program. As counselors for the care program, that's Jasmine Aviles, Suine Silva, is that right, Suine?
Mhm.
And Mary James. 19, Bulldog Care Program Helping Hands, that's as listed. 20, intern, approve the following interns for the District 4 school district: Samantha Polak, Montclair State University Counseling Program, and practicum with Shannon Hopkins at the Rutherford High School. 21, travel reimbursements for the 2021 school year. That's for Amanda Taza, Ellen Gilson, and Rachel Mahias. And that's it. So I present the following motions for the board's approval.
Okay, any questions or comments? Hearing none, Ms. Ahmed, you've moved those. Do we have a second? Ms. Librera, any last comments? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Librera,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Alati.
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next we have curriculum and instruction. Mrs. Jones.
Thank you. We did not have a curriculum and instruction meeting, and for the first time ever, there's only one resolution, and that is an out-of-district placement for one student.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? Hearing none, Ms. Jones, you want to move this?
Resolution 1 for out-of-district placement.
All right, we have a second. Mr. Sprayberry. Last comments. Hearing none. Mr. Kelly, please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Librera,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Alati.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay, next we have finance with Dr. Racine.
All right, for finance, we have two motions. Number one is the approval of bills. Number two is to accept coronavirus relief funds, federal funds. That's it.
Okay, any comments? Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, I do. I've been trying to get some clarification from the state about what to do or what happens with the federal funds allocated to the academy at St. Mary. So that number may not be correct. I think the way it's worked with the other federal grants is that the academy share has been removed, and I think in some cases it's been given to us. So I'm going to adjust that number if necessary, that $14,000 number. The top number is ours. It's a grant that's due in this Wednesday. We can use that, at our discretion for cleaning supplies, for anything that will help us get through this process. So, thank
So
you.
should we just be approving that first number, or what's your suggestion?
Well, the second number is not going to be any higher than it is right now. So
Okay.
I would suggest just allowing me to correct the minutes when I
Okay.
get the actual number, but it would be less than that number. And that's again one of those pass-through numbers that we just manage those funds.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Ms. Libera?
Are the relief funds reflective of the money spent, or is that just a formula allocation for the district?
This is a formula allocation.
Okay. And how, not in terms of specific numbers, but just in terms of magnitude, how does that compare to the expenses that we've had to take on as a district?
Well, we've pretty much been able to pay for everything so far with the original CARES Act funds, which comes to about $60,000 to $70,000 for supplies and shields and and
Right.
things that were needed. So I mean, this does a pretty good job of covering that so
Okay.
far.
Good.
So and this will go a long way too. Because I think we've got a bit of a stockpile and we're
Okay.
we continue. In fact, we got a shipment. The borough had come to me probably back in May to say the county wants to take an order for masks and stuff like that. What do you need? So we gave them the list back in May. Then I completely forgot about it. Well, the stuff came in last week, so
Right.
so we are stockpiling, if I can use that
Yeah.
word.
Preparing.
Yes, we're in good
That's much
shape.
better.
We're in pretty good shape right now.
That's great
And,
news.
I failed to mention before. I wanted to thank the borough and the county for that
Yeah.
donation. The money, this fund that we just found out about a few weeks ago, right? What we're approving tonight, the CARES Act, and the consortium that we got in with the South Bergen Jointure, which allowed us to get in bulk. So we've been doing pretty well, and we've asked the administrators to not wait, till they're running out to let us know. And we have some stuff in stock, and some of the things, are one-shot purchases, like the air purifiers and the desk shields and things like that. So, I think this money will help us go deeper into the year before we start getting concerned.
Great. Thank you.
Other questions, Dr. Racine?
Yeah, this is the second funds we received. Are there more grants in the works or available? Or is it one and done, Charlotte?
No, not that I'm aware of. And this one kind of popped up out of nowhere. I will say, like I indicated before, the CARES Act, which is the one that was approved back in June, I saw today that they have reallocated that the funds attributable to the academy at St. Mary's. They've reallocated them mostly to us, so that gives us another $5,000 for more stuff. So who knows what's going to happen is basically what I'm saying.
I would say one thing though, and is with the political world being what it is, and the idea of coming up with funding something again or finding more funds, but they've been very sometimes with grants and things like that. And Joe can speak better to this than I can. Mr. Kelly can. You have to almost go looking for them, and you have to go knocking on a lot of doors. They've been very. There's money available, and
Yeah.
you could use it as long as you tell us what you want by a certain date. So they're both on the state and to a lesser extent on the federal level because we get less federal funding, but still on both levels, grant money has been very transparent, to use that buzzword. They've been letting us know it's there and it's available.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Dr. Racine, you want to move those?
I'd like to move numbers 1 and 2.
All right, do we have a second? Ms. Cabrera, any last comments? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Cabrera,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Alati.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion's carried.
Thank you. Next, we have policy. Do we have an update, Ms. Cabrera?
No update tonight.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on now to buildings and grounds. Mr. Healy.
Yes, we did not have a Buildings and Ground Committee meeting since our last board meeting. Tonight, there is one resolution being moved for review and approval, which includes 3 change order items as listed.
Okay. Any comments about the change order items?
Not really. I will tell you, and I've mentioned before, that Brahma has about $26,000 worth of change orders here. They have, I forget what their allowance was. It was about $250,000, and we've allocated most of that. So they're running a little low. I'm keeping an eye on it, but there's still a positive balance in that. And I think to Rachel's point before, Sylvan, this is the work at the kindergarten center, is a much older building. So as they dig, as they get in there, they're finding things that they hadn't expected, and that results in change orders. So now they're finished with most of the inside work. I would expect the need for that to go down quite a bit, but we'll continue to keep an eye on it, and we'll talk about it more at the Buildings and Grounds Committee on the 19th.
So, Mr. Kelly, you're saying that you're monitoring the thresholds for any overages, and at that point,
If
you'd
they
work-
exceed the allowance. And so far, nobody else has or come close, except for Brahma, but we're keeping an eye on it.
Mr. Sprayberry?
So, Mr. Guy, what's the recourse if they do go over budget? The change
I don't think there's a recourse. It's, we do look at these things. The architects are involved in decisions to recommend proceeding. The construction managers are involved in those discussions, and they come to me to get verbal approval. There's not really any repercussions, I don't think, but we are monitoring these, each and every one of them, as they come through. I think in the others that we have outstanding right now, especially Union, because that's the floors, that's almost done. Lincoln is almost done. We're gonna have money in there, so I may just transfer those allowances into this one just to make sure we're covered.
Right, so the shortages or the under dollars there can be moved over to help.
Oh yeah,
the
we
overall-
can move money between projects as necessary.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Haley, would you
We'd
like
like
to
to
move this?
move resolution number 1.
Okay, we have a second. Mr. Sprayberry, any last comments? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Librera,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Alati.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on now to old business. Old business, Ms. Judd.
Thank you for the reminder. I did attend the Washington School PTA meeting at the end of September. They presented their budget for the year, and I did give an update on the referendum and the changes, and the fact that the Buildings and Grounds Committee had taken the tour. That's pretty much it.
Great, thank you. Mr. Sprayberry?
Following up with Ms. Jones, I also attended the Lincoln School PTA, gave them an update, went over the board goals, what we had done, discussed what we discussed at the previous board meeting. So, and that PTA has an outstanding, wonderful budget, thanks to some of the fellow members and treasurers that, have left there, moved on, but it was a great meeting, so a lot of positivity.
Good to hear it. Thank you. Mr. Haley and then Mr. Conti.
Just one quick one. Mr. Hurley put out a reminder regarding the board convention, which is virtual. It's also known as the virtual workshop, October 20th. And Mr. Kelly needs to know if anyone, I know Dr. Lottie, Mrs. Jones, and myself have confirmed we wish to go, and you'll register us. But Mr. Kelly needs to know, and if anyone else this week would be preferred, if you could have those names.
There is a volume discount here, so if we have more than 5 people, then we get up to 25 people for only $900, but it's $200 per person. So we only have 3 people now. We can get 2 more. And the beauty of this one is that, because it is all virtual, these programs will be available for you for the next year. So you can go back at any time you want.
Right, so just,
That was the music to my ears.
and just to reiterate that if every board member signed up, it's how much, Joe? You said?
Yeah, so it's $900. If all
$9.
9 board members sign up, it's basically a 50% discount, and you have up to a year to watch all of the videos that are recorded in the conference.
And right now with 3 members, it's $600. So for $300 more, everyone could sign up, and you have a full year, they'll be live.
Say again? The date, October 20th through 22nd.
Right, but keep in mind, it's not like it was in the past. It will be posted on October 20th. My understanding is they'll be up for a full year, so you can log in and look at them in July.
A lot of good stuff.
It sounded though that the registration date was the 20th though. You have to
Right, we
register
have to do
before
it.
that. Yeah.
If I could suggest, in light of our discussion at strategic planning,
Yeah.
it might be helpful to do that where we had all 9 members sign up.
Yeah.
And it could help support some of our board development.
Right.
And I think it could be a resource.
100%. I mean, if no one, if one more person uses it, right, it's a wash for 4 members signing up. So it's almost a no-brainer. I mean, if you don't log in and look at them, there's really no harm. It's not costing us more money, and it's the opportunity there. Or you may see something that comes up down the road, right, and you find the workshop. So maybe we could, Joe, I don't know how you, Mr. Kelly, I don't know, you want to proceed? Do you want to, does the board want everybody to be?
Yeah, I was going to say, does anyone object to being registered for the conference? Okay, so all the appropriate folks,
Yeah, we'll just talk offline.
yeah.
So the question, if it's good for the whole year, does that include a new board member coming on with a transfer?
Probably not. I thought about that, but I can't register him yet because he's not on the board, so I
Well,
don't know how that would
if,
work.
Well, but it's good for a whole year.
but you know the board member, give him your login and he's good to go.
Right, okay.
We could do the meetings on Zoom and just
So
share.
it may not make sense for me to do it, but we should just talk about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've
Got my answer.
got, okay, excellent.
Mr. Conti. I think Mr. Conti had a.
All right, Mr. Conti.
Yeah, I like these. I attended the PTA meeting at Lincoln. Gave them an update on the referendum. Thanked them for everything they've been doing as far as helping with COVID and all that. One interesting note, one interesting topic I should say was that they're canceling the Halloween parade, obviously, due to the COVID restrictions. But they are working up some interesting alternatives, which was really great to hear that they've got a plan B in place. So that's all I have to report.
Very nice. Ms. Zeman?
I saw in the newspaper or something that they're having, on Halloween, was it on Lucy night, the night before, they're having a big thing at the park for the kids.
Yeah.
Well,
But I think that's a town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Town's having
Right.
it down here. Well,
so our alternative plan is hand out posters about the town thing. Now, we're not going to be doing parades this year. We can't, and we're not even supposed to be doing building evacuations, have everybody out at one time. So we're not going to do parades, but there'll be some program. Keep in mind, last year we had a very bad storm on Halloween, and we canceled all of the outdoor stuff and did everything indoors, and it was fine. So we'll do that again, And with the construction at Pierpont, the thing that they always did in the back, that's gone now anyway. So we'll come up with some new tradition.
All right, thank you. So I was going to ask Mr. Mazzone, who's the chair of strategic planning, if you want to talk about our last meeting.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. Just some brief remarks. We met on the 28th at about 7, and we hadn't had a strategic planning meeting for some time given the COVID restrictions. So what we did was we really had a recap on some of the projects you've heard here tonight. We talked about some future plans and ideas. But one of the things that we thought was important to share with the rest of the board immediately is that the topic of boardsmanship has come up and how to improve the board as a whole. And so what we thought we would look to do, especially knowing, we have new board members coming on from time to time, explaining really what some of the roles are, what some of the committees are, even my own experience being, a new board member, not knowing, what you do in the planning committee and buildings and grounds and finance. And so what we thought we would do is we would start with some board development and maybe just some brief PowerPoints, so that way when a new board member comes on, that, a new board member can look at those materials. We thought it might be nice. I think it was the reorg meeting that we might kick this off, right? So what we thought we would do, so things look and feel kind of the same, is that we develop a slide deck that can be shared out and use that as kind of a template and look to build that. Maybe we start with finance in January, right? Have Greg do that. But what I thought I'd do is work to develop that slide deck and then share it with each of the leads, and then we can have a conversation about that. But really a focus on developing board member skills, knowledge, and awareness. I think we went through that with the referendum where we talked about all being able to have a consistent message and being able to have consistent, talking points as a whole unit.
Thank you. Yeah, you summarized it perfectly. So you'll be expecting, I don't know if it'll be a survey or just sort of feedback loop so that we can all work on this as one of our board goals for the year. Any questions or comments from Mr. Mazzone? I had one piece of old business I forgot to mention in my president's report. So over the summer, New Jersey School Boards Association has a school leader award that you can apply to, and they have a theme each year, and then it's a competition among school districts. And so the theme this year was the creative ways that you brought learning alive during the remote time. And ours, we submitted. We did not take first place, but we got a certificate of appreciation award. Our program is called Traditions Keep Students Engaged. And the focus was some admin who got together and wrote about all the things that were done this spring to keep students engaged. The virtual art gallery, all of the end of the year milestone events that were captured on Zoom, a number of different curricular things that were reimagined. So although we didn't win, super appreciative to the spirit of that, and just wanted to thank everyone who was involved in the submission. Other old business? Hearing none. Legislative update?
Nothing to report tonight other than ballots have gone out for the next election. So everyone vote.
Okay, thank you. So at 9:18 p.m., we are now going to open the meeting to the public for any comments related or unrelated to the agenda. We're going to start with in person. Name and address.
James Bogosian, 155 Home Ave. Just a minor question on the notifications that went out to Union School today. In the future, if the protocol allows, possibly in the first email that goes out, stating that if you don't get a follow-up email, that your child was likely not impacted or something like that, may be helpful to parents who are questioning whether their child was in the room with the individual whose case.
Yeah, it's a good point, and that's what happens when you use templates sometimes, and but I just, in fact, acted like I was taking notes here, but I actually sent a message out that we should send something to that effect tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Okay. But if anybody if anybody talks to anybody, right, you would have gotten, the parent would have gotten a specific email if their child potentially had contact. Okay. Simultaneous to the other email. So.
And just to clarify, Jack, that means if the parent had a child in any of the classes
Right.
that the child was in.
Right. So the entire school population. Keep in mind also that 25% of the students don't come to school, and half of the kids who were in school weren't in that day, right? But every student, whether they're remote, Bulldog group or Blue group, got the letter that said, for next whatever days, we're totally remote. The 30 or so parents of students whose child may have been in a class with the other child received a separate letter that said, you may have been exposed and these are things to look for. So again, I think that's a very good point to make that point clear, and we'll send something out in the morning just to make sure people understand that.
That's great, thank you.
Julie, do we take their temperature when they walk in the door?
No, we do a checklist.
You do?
A checklist, a parent checklist. Yeah, that was in. Yeah, parents. Yeah, it's a self-check. Right.
So we're still in the open to the public portion of the meeting, so I want to turn it over to those on Zoom right now. If anyone has any comment related to or not related to the agenda, you can unmute yourselves at this point. Okay, hearing no one, we're going to close that portion of the meeting at 9:21 p.m. And I believe there is a need for an executive session.
On
We're
two-
going to be discussing
Two legal issues.
two
Legal issues.
legal issues, action, no action
Right.
taken?
Hmm?
No
And-
action taken?
right. And 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay,
We'll stay here.
all right.
We'll
Can I get
stay
a
here.
motion? Mr. Mazzone, seconded by Mrs. Jones. All in favor? All right, we are going to go into executive session, and we are going to thank everyone who came this evening to participate. Thank you for joining us.